Hello everyone, I am Aryan Chapushte and today we have with us Karthik Rangarajan, who is the founder and CEO of Agam Robotics. His startup is all about drone parts. So basically this video is going to be a great resource for those who want to start their career into drones and also robotics. So make sure that you watch the video till the very end and subscribe to this channel. So without wasting time, let's get started with the video. How are you, Karthik? Like, what's going on?
I'm good. Things are moving slow, but pretty much I'm like seeing some sort of progress happening.
Right.
And we had the things tested and it's all working.
Actually, I am also good. Currently pursuing automation and robotics engineering in Pune. So, like, I need some guidance from you as well because you are a very good experienced engineer in robotics. And also, can you share with me about bit yourself, like the journey of you as well, and also about Agam Robotics, the startup that you are working upon?
Sure, sure. Just to give a bit of a background over here, like I'll try to brief it. I did my engineering, like I graduated from engineering back in 2013.
Okay.
And um, I did my project based on like a vertical takeoff and landing VTOL aircraft. So back like 10 years ago, it wasn't a huge thing. So we were like
Mm-hmm.
trying to develop like the firmware and algorithm in a very early stage. And that's something like that was like the intro to the drone world, I would say. And
Right.
after that, like I'm working in a company called Centum Electronics as a product engineer. Like I've been uh, in the field of like PCB manufacturing and like designing for like in the field of defense and aerospace. And
Mm-hmm.
in parallel to that, it's like working on building drones and stuff like not building in the sense like mostly assembling, like getting parts and like assembling it. And that's where like I had this question of like how can we like actually manufacture those parts. Like I used to use like
Mm-hmm.
the flight controllers, these motors and stuff like that. So I always had the question of like what goes inside it, like how can we build this like from scratch,
Yeah.
like not just like put it but like I had the question of like how do we like manufacture it or like design it and do everything from scratch. So that's
Right.
the question I had, and I want to focus more on that aspect. And I was like going deep into it, and that's where I found like you need to have knowledge of like I do have some sort of background in embedded system, but I wanted to go in depth in the embedded systems in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
electronics, programming part, and like the mechanical aspect, like whether it be the aircraft dynamics, aerodynamics, or like designing like the entire CAD model and things like that. So that's where my interest got focused more on the robotic side, which is technically a combination of the electronics, programming, and mechanical aspect.
Right.
So that's where I choose robotics, and I started like looking for you know domains and like places where I can like do robotics, and that's where I had the interest of doing like my masters, and I applied to
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of cities across in the field of like robotics in specific, like not as a specialization.
Okay.
So I did get into New York University. I did like my masters in robotics and mechatronics, and I took that as a base to like build that question of like how do we like
Right.
build the drone from scratch, right?
Right.
So I like learning all those aspects of like not just that in terms of like the design and like programming, but also more on robotic side of it, like
Mm-hmm.
generic robots as
Right.
well,
Right.
including deep AI, neural networks, and computer
Mm-hmm.
vision, loss, and these are the things I learned along the way. And I started like directing that skills and knowledge whatever I gained towards like the question of again, how do I like build a drone from scratch?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I started like utilizing the skills. Like again, I wasn't like very skillful in very one particular skill set. Like I started
Mm-hmm.
learning like a lot of different things across like all the domains, and I was like more focused on like I need to get this thing done rather than like be an expert in that field. So that was my focus. And since like the pandemic, I think it was during 2020, I started like doing R&D on developing the drone itself. So I
Okay.
started looking on how do I like build the system, like whether it be like flight controllers, sensor systems, and all the complete aspect of the drones. And yeah, in 2022, I made the decision that I need to go back to India and like start working on this as a the main focus. It was more of a project back then, and once I came back, it was like the main thing, right? Like it was sort of like the main vision of myself as well as the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I started like registering the focus more on getting local manufacturers, trying to
Right.
make sure like it's as much as possible. I wanted to like get it manufactured in India, and there has been like a lot of delays, um, but yeah, like we were able to like get it done.
Actually, like your journey is very inspiring because very few people think of coming back to India and start their own company. Actually, the things are changing right now, but still, like many people settle down there to get a nice job and like a stable income also. So, like, why did you choose like to not do a job and to start your own company? That too in India. So, what was your like that aspect of choosing a startup over a job?
So just to roll back over there, like even when I chose like doing masters, right? Like the reason for doing my masters over in US was to like gain the knowledge. Like I already had a plan of like developing drones. Like I was working in the field
Mm-hmm.
of drones at that time. Like I went to US to do my masters in 2017, but from 2013 to 2017, I've been like building a lot of drones and things like that as a project. And that's always my goal was like to build drones and manufacture drones in India. And going to US was like a um, a stepping stone, I would say, like
Mm-hmm.
to move towards that goal and direction. I wanted some sort of a knowledge and experience, and that's why I chose it. And as soon as I felt like I learned some things over there, and I would have to like move back to the US, it was the right time. And it wasn't a hard decision for me because I already had made up my mind that I will be coming back to India.
Right.
Lot of people like from friends and family, they did not like even think about it. Like they said,
Yeah.
once you're going to US, you're going to be down there. It's not like you'll be coming back. I was pretty
Right.
confident like I will be coming back. I made that decision. And hard for me, but
Mm-hmm.
understand like a few of my was still there in US. They just cannot come back because they have like a lot of liabilities and they are like planning to like live for longer over there, try to like make money and come back. But for me, my focus or like my vision was to like build a company. So whenever I was like quite ready that I had to come back, I made that decision.
Right. Actually, uh, that was a like very good decision. Like hats off to your decision because very rare people take these kind of decisions. So basically, actually, I want to ask about the master's question, but I am like more curious to ask about the Agam Robotics part. Like, what is Agam Robotics and what are you currently working on? Please, can you explain about that?
So, like the sort of like the goal or vision for Agam Robotics was that like we wanted to develop like full-fledged consumer camera drones, which are like sort of readily available in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Like how you would look into mobile phones or smartphones, right? Like you will go to like certain e-commerce websites and then like you like look for the spec and then you will like place the order. Like what I was looking at was that this specific industry doesn't exist in India.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As of now, like see most of the drone companies were like more on service sector. Like if
Right.
you have certain specification of applications, inspection, mapping, agriculture. So they are more towards like build to order, meaning like you
Mm-hmm.
place an order to them saying like 30 drones, 50 drones. They'll place order for the components, they'll assemble it, put it together, and then like ship it
Right.
to you. When I was like planning to do that, that sort of like consumer camera drone sector wasn't exist like it wasn't in existence.
Hmm.
Right now, like in the beginning of this 2024 is when I'm like seeing few companies are coming up with that sector, like consumer camera drone sector in India from like Indian companies. But if you look at it, they are actually not made in India. They are just bringing like a Chinese drones,
Right.
rebranding with their company logo, and then like reselling it.
Yeah.
One thing is that not right because it's okay to sell Chinese drones as a in India with their company logo, but calling it as made in India is what actually is wrong. They're
Hmm.
like not making anything. They're just like bringing parts and like
Yeah.
getting the drone basically and like relabeling it.
Right.
So
Just folding
that is
India.
yeah. So that is where we wanted to focus on. But as I was like doing more research on this sector, I also found like all these 300 plus drone companies in India who are also like serving for service sector. They are not actually manufacturing those drones. They're just like getting
Hmm.
parts and like assembling it together. Like it makes sense for a consumer drone, but for even the even some really bad cases like military drones and things which are going to like Indian government is also being like assembled completely. They just
Hmm.
taken like Chinese components and putting it together. So that was something like which made me focus on towards like why can't we manufacture certain components which are very critical. For example,
Right.
motors and things like that will be a problem. But something which is like a brain of the drone, which is autopilot
Hmm.
system or like flight control, was something like should be made in India, and we should have an alternative to Chinese manufacture. So
Right.
that's somewhat why shift changed to. And I'm focusing more towards like developing drone components for these industries. I'm starting from like flight controllers or autopilots. And few weeks back, have completed complete testing of that system, and everything seems to be working, and it's sort of like ready to be released to the market. And I do have like some samples, and like already there are a few companies in India as well as like outside of India who are like
Okay.
interested in buying this, the autopilot system. So I'm already reserving some units for them. And there are like few, I would have like a couple of other systems where I'm like planning to sell it locally within like Bangalore, so that like I'll be able to support them and like see if there are any issues with them. So that is something
Okay.
what I'm focusing on. And, once I'm like okay with that stage, like I'll be moving to the next part, which is like pilot lot or like mass production, probably
Okay.
based on the order or based on like the individual people who are like interested to buy it. I'll sort of like make a pre-order stage where they can like place order for it, and then within maybe like a month or in a 6 weeks of duration, we'll be able to like produce the complete autopilot system and like ship it to them.
I was not able to get that that the you will be able to build the autopilot system. So also you are focusing on software or else only the electronics part of like flight controller. So
So what I'm based off is like I can show you the flight controller. So this
Yeah.
is typically the hardware part of the autopilot system.
Okay.
So this is like a two-part system. So there is a carrier board or a base board, and then the flight controller to it.
Okay.
So in the market, if you see, there are like few of these in the market available for anyone to purchase, which are basically like Chinese manufacturers producing it. And the software side is more as an open source. So people from all over the globe are like contributing to it, and it's a huge community. There's like a huge support to it, and a lot of people are like making changes to it. It's on GitHub, and people are like supporting it, and it's been widely used across like industries. And PX4 is the firmware, and people from like specific to like industries are the ones who actually use it. So it is actually
Right.
really a robust, firmware platform, And what we are doing is providing an alternate hardware to it from
Mm.
the Chinese company. And this is like purely manufactured in India, like the PCBs, the fabrication and assembly, everything is done in India. The only unfortunate thing is like we had to import the components because India doesn't have semiconductor industry. So the
Okay.
components are imported. Rest of the manufacturing process is happening in India.
Right.
Probably this would be uh, first, I would say, like the flight controller ever made in India, which is of PAB standard.
Actually, I doesn't know much about this industry, but according to my research, that definitely this is the first thing that you will be launching in India, like made in India flight controller. My next question is about like, are you running this startup completely bootstrap model, or else are you also trying for funding uh, from VCs, or else from any external, or else also government funding?
So for now, I'm like completely bootstrapped. It's all like self-funded.
Okay.
And also like I'm running my company alone. Like the reason being like I made this decision for a few reasons. One is
Mm.
like if there are certain decisions that I need to take, that needs to happen immediately. I don't want to like wait
Right.
for someone to also like vote or like pitch in saying like this is okay or this is not okay. I wanted to
Yeah.
make that decision faster because there is already a lot of delays in like manufacturing and things like that. We have spent like almost an year just to like get these manufactured and get the product in hand and like get it tested.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to like waste time on those aspects. And second is also like in case like this doesn't work out, like the prototypes doesn't work out and the issues we are facing, I didn't want to like waste someone else's money. Like if some investors, even though the investors know that there is a risk and they'll invest it,
Mm.
but I didn't want to waste in that aspect, trying to convince them that there is an idea like this and they had to invest in it. So I wanted to like show them that there is a physical product which is actually working. I'll be able to prove them that this is working and there is a market demand.
Right.
So these are the reasons why I decided like not to like get external funding just with an idea or like the market research that I've done. I wanted to like prove that it is possible to do it. Now like as we know like the product is all working. I want to take that next step further, like build a team and also like
Mm.
get investors you know look into it, and like if they are interested I want them to like invest in it. So this is something like I'll be working on in the next few months.
Right. Great, great. So also there is a vision of India. We want to become a drone hub to 2030. So what is your take on this? Like, will be able to like achieve that particular timeline, or else more time is needed for that?
So I did make this video about it on my YouTube channel.
Mm.
Why India won't be a global drone hub by 2030. So I did speak about certain things. If we had to like be a global drone hub by 2030, what we should be doing. So I'll just like bring those points over here. One is being like, making companies like us. There are like few other companies also in the market who are actually developing um, like flight controllers and like other systems which are like, which are not being done by even like big companies, big
Mm.
giants like public and private companies which are really well funded. That is something we need to avoid. Like we need to make sure like the PLI schemes where the fundings are going to those such companies where they are like not investing in actual R&D, but what they are basically doing is like import parts and like rebranding it. So we want like the government to actually look into it and make sure like the funds are like actually being utilized in the right sense. Like
Right.
for example, in our case, if that sort of a PLI scheme was there, like we could have actually progressed much faster.
Mm.
But unfortunately, we are not funded by either government or like private equities or like private investors. That's the biggest drawback what I'm seeing. If this continues for the next few years and big players are taking advantage by like importing Chinese parts, at any given point, if there is a conflict between the countries where we are importing from, and we are not able to do so in the future, we won't have any sort of alternatives at that point.
Right.
So doing indigenous, like supporting companies who are like developing everything here in India has to happen. If not, that's like
Right.
that's where we won't be actually a global drone hub by 2030.
Exactly. So also like my question was about what is the like long-term vision of Agam Robotics? Are you completely into manufacturing, or also you want to switch to a different field as well, like just selling the drone kits for students or for educational purpose?
Like maybe this might change as we like bring more people, and like the vision of the company might change in a direction towards what you are saying. But for now, like my focus is more on like if we are selling the drone kit either to like students or like as a complete drone in the market, for me like the entire drone parts has to be manufactured in India
Mm-hmm.
if we are doing it. Like we don't
Right.
like aside to components, right? Like the electronic components or chipsets and things like that. Let's not focus on that sector, but anything which goes in the drones, like all the electronics, let it be like navigation systems like GPS, sensor systems, autopilots, motors, propellers, and if there is a frame, a drone frame, and all those things needs to be manufactured in India. That's what our focus is. Until we reach that point or that stage where we have all the parts of our drone is like manufactured in India, and we are able to like put it together as a kit, that's where we'll be ready to sell it as a drone kit.
Right.
Until then, we
Right.
don't want to go to that. We had
Mm.
to develop everything in house, and until then, like we'll try to serve all these companies who are like looking for um, made in India components that they need to switch from like their Chinese parts to made in India parts, and we'll like try to cater to that one. Just to add to that point, like we'll also be making these parts like available commercially. It's not just
Okay.
like it's only available to B2B system. Like it's also like for consumers or individuals. So if anyone wants to
Mm-hmm.
build a drone, like it's up to them to choose like Chinese parts like motors and propellers. As of now, we don't have the actual alternate for made in India parts for motors and propellers
Mm-hmm.
in a large scale. I mean, if you are building as
Right.
a consumer, whatever you're like seeing on the e-commerce platform or like any hobby shops, they're all like Chinese made. So
Chinese.
if they
Yeah.
want to like take our flight controller and put their, like typically what I have done like in my drone thing, like all these drones in this are like entirely Chinese parts. Like this is something
Mm.
I need to acknowledge, and I will acknowledge in any given point of time. And one thing in the whole system, what has been replaced with made in India is our flight controller, which is going to sit over
Mm.
it. That is the one which is going to be like completely made in India, and rest of the entire system is like Chinese made part.
Right.
So if anyone is building drones like that, and they want to put our flight controller into it, and in future we'll come up with like a lot of different components as well, like sensor systems, GPS, and a lot of other sensors, right? And ESCs like motor controllers. So if we are whenever we are able to come up with those components, we'll try to make it commercially available. And anyone who wants to build, like either students or like universities or schools, if they are like planning to
Right.
build a kit, can source our components whatever they can for like what is made in India. And whichever they are not able to source it locally, they can actually get a Chinese
Mm-hmm.
alternative.
That's completely true, because like unless and until we don't take an initiative to buy Indian components, like the startups will not get that particular response in the market. And also the cost of the parts will also come down because of manufacturing itself in India. So that's why, because building a drone is now also it is costly if we build a drone in college, because the components are really costly. But like if you build a flight controller, definitely we will be able to purchase those components and build our project.
Definitely. We are
Right.
also like planning to keep the pricing very similar to what you're getting in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So that like even though we are like not making a huge margin out of it, My plan is to keep the pricing very similar so that people don't have to worry about importing and shipping and things like that. One. And second is when you buy these flight controllers which are available in the market, you don't get any sort of support from them, right? Like it's
Right.
coming from a different manufacturer from China, and then it gets passed on to many distributors. And these platforms, like the online yeah, e-commerce platform who are selling those flight controller, or if you're getting it from local hobby shops, they have no clue about that hardware, so they don't
Yeah.
support anything related to software the hardware support, or the software support. So that is something we'll be able to do, because the
Right.
design is ours, and we are manufacturing it and we are designing it. If there is any issue with that specific system, we'll be able to troubleshoot and find out what the issue is, and we can resolve for them. So that is sort of the huge advantage for people over here in India, that they can take advantage from us, as against to
Right.
going with the alternative.
Basically, you have expertise in aerial robotics. So, what suggestion would you like to give to the students who are interested into drones? What skills should they focus upon?
I robotics in general. So I have gone through a lot of different types of robotics, robot systems. Like it could be ground vehicles. We have actually built in our university, from NYU, we did snake robot, which
Mm-hmm.
can actually transform its shape and carry packages this is within warehouse, where the robot can actually go over an object and carry it and take it to a different place where it needs to be. So that is completely
Right.
autonomous, and that's a completely ground vehicle. So from NYU, I never did much on the aerial robotics, because it was more on team related projects which we had to
Mm-hmm.
do, and not everyone would be interested in drones. So there were few places where I actually had the opportunity to work on single projects, individual projects, and that's where I've actually deployed drone related solutions, which are computer vision and deep learning based power line tracking. Like for example, drones which are meant for inspection of power lines. And most of the cases, for the drones, it is very hard to see those power lines, because it's very thin and it can get
Mm.
blended from the background. So I was able to build a completely neural network based system, where the drone carries a camera, and the camera detects that power line and tells the drone this is the line where it needs to avoid. So I have
Okay.
built those sort of systems. In general, I would say if anyone wants to get into drones, or in general robotics, I would say there are a vast amount of field within robotics. Like robotics, if you
Mm.
see, is a very niche field. But once you get into robotics, there's tons of different fields again. Like it could be in terms of the hardware, it could be in terms of the firmware development, or the technology. For example, it could be computer vision, deep learning, neural networks, and now with AI, you can actually do a lot more things. And
Right.
with an addition of OpenAI and ChatGPT, you can actually combine using these APIs and build more robust applications. But I would say understand the core optics of it. You need
Mm.
to understand the basic functionality, what is going into it. Even if you use a ChatGPT wrapper or something like that, you need to understand what is happening in the code level, what is happening in
Mm.
the code part. And for example, if it is doing a computer vision and processing an image or a video, you need to actually understand how those things are done, what sort of algorithm goes into it, what sort of the functionality is built, and you need to understand that and then take it to the next stage. The basics is a must in whatever aspect you take, either computer vision or ROS, or building an entire hardware. You need to understand the core understanding of what goes into it. For example, if you take drones, right? These
Mm.
open source platform has a lot of advantage. You have to build the entire code from scratch. you have like all these open source code available from like what you can actually continue building. But you need to understand like what goes into that code as well. Like what sort of algorithm, the control system, like what sort of like feedback things which are happening, like how those the sensors work, like how the sensor provides the data and how the algorithm takes that data and like processes. So that is something I would recommend, like going to the core level and understand like what is happening deep down.
There is a boom in the software side about not only about robotics but also in the other engineering domains as well. But specifically in robotics also, like many of the students or else many of the professionals prefer the software side, like coding, programming, for example ROS and all those things. But the students who are interested more into electronics or hardware, so like how should they proceed further to get more exposure into that field and start their career into the hardware or electronics of robotics?
I've been working on this context on my further YouTube videos. Like it's still in
Okay.
the works. I've been really busy on the prototyping development. I'll just like
Right.
bring those points over here. There are like two, like how I divided was like two things. One where like there are students who are interested in like getting into hardware or like robotics, like physical things, and then
Mm-hmm.
there are like people who are actually working in the software domain, like they may be like 2 years or like 5 years or 10 years of experience in the software domain. Now that they're looking that the hardware is getting some sort of traction and they want to like build something really good. So they want to do that switch from like software to this. So I saw like
Mm-hmm.
two different, like this is based on interaction with a lot of people on Twitter and like other places. So I found like I needed to split into two groups, as in like students who are interested into getting a hardware and people who are
Right.
experienced in the field want to get into hardware. So for students, what I would recommend is like first is to try to get from the college side to allocate some funds or like create some sort of club or something in terms of hardware to
Okay.
get like students who are like interested in that field, who want to like
Mm-hmm.
do some sort of robotics and stuff and want to build things. And in that way, you can actually buy like certain kits or like buy different components what is needed to build a robotic system or like experiment with it from the
Mm-hmm.
college side. So
Right.
you'll be able to like also uh, bring that club thing into different competitions and things like that, which is happening across like cities and across the country as well. So this is something which uh, has to happen from like the from the university or the college side, because for the software, like all you need is like a computer, laptop, and then like you'll be able to just like build applications and develop something from it. But for anything hardware, you just need enough funds or like enough money to like build things. Like anything
Right.
you touch is
Mm-hmm.
actually an expensive part, and
Yeah.
especially if you're like big, the problem what happens is like you might short something or you might break something and something gets burned, like anything like whatever the board you're like planning to work with is getting burned. So now like it's completely unusable, and like now you need to replace with the another board, and now you need to like again purchase those things, right? Like those are the
Right.
aspects which like really expensive. So that has to happen from the college side or like the university level. In fact, what I have to say is like almost like 10 years ago in our college, we did that. Like we had like a IEEE club, and through that we actually did a lot of different things. Like almost 10 years ago, we even like brought Arduino to classes within our like
Okay.
and we did like a lot of courses like 3 day and a week of workshop on Arduino and things like that. So that is something I would recommend doing still, like getting to understand how those electronics work. For example, if you're going with like Arduino or like any sort of like microcontroller, you need to understand like how sensors connect to it, how do you program the microcontroller, and how do
Mm-hmm.
you like that program into the microcontroller, and how do you make connections, how do you make temporary connections like using breadboard, and how do you like transfer that breadboard to a permanent circuitry, like perf board or like a PCB, wherein like you're actually soldering it. So you need to have like soldering kit as well. So most of the universities usually tend to have those soldering stations and things like that, but accessing that would be a difficult. But once you
Right.
form like the club through them, that is where like you'll be able to access all these things. And
Yeah.
for someone who like experience or like has been working in the software domain, for them, I would say like it shouldn't be much difficult to get started because they already have some sort of financial
Hmm.
stability, and they should be, and they can be able to like invest in these hardware things. Like just get a if you're like totally new to electronics or hardware, I would recommend like getting Arduino kits and things like that, which is not really expensive for them. And you get like all these sensors, LEDs, resistors, capacitors, and things like that. And there are like tons of videos on YouTube wherein like you can understand what each of those things does, and you can like follow through that and build your own thing, and then focus more towards like building towards an application, right? Like build a product or an application.
Right.
It could be anything like in your field of interest, using the sensors provided. Like you usually get like IMU sensors, gyroscopes, and a lot of different like ultrasound sensors and IR sensors and things like that. So you can try to use these and build an application, or if possible, like build a product out of it,
Hmm.
something like a
Right.
finished product. So it will take time to do some sort of like a finished product in case of like if you need to do an enclosure to that entire electronics. So now you had to like look into CAD designing, and you had to 3D print because that is much cheaper. You have like
Hmm.
a lot of these 3D printing service already available across like India. You can
Yeah.
just upload your design, get a 3D printed part. If not, if anyone who is like working in the software domain and they want to get into hardware, my best recommendation is to get a 3D printer. Like it shouldn't cost like 20 to 25,000. Like you get a
Yeah.
really good 3D
Right.
printer, like work towards it, like maintaining that and printing stuff from it. And initially, you can like do anything what is available in the in the internet, right? Like you can go to Thingiverse, for example. You can download like a lot of different files. You don't have to design initially. Just print something, like anything you like, right? Like anything from just I like cartoon characters to like film characters to superhero stuff. So you can like look into that, whatever you're interested in, and like just download that and load it into your printer and print stuff. So this way you understand like how to do the dynamics of the 3D printer. And the next step is to like design your own using 3D printed 3D CAD model softwares. There are like a lot of softwares like Tinkercad, Fusion 360, and
Hmm.
there are like few more that are coming up. SketchUp, I guess, is all like free and open source. Like anything for basic design should be good enough to like begin with. There again, like
Right.
there are a lot of tutorials on YouTube like, how to design and like how to make your own stuff, and find out like how do you like bring that part whatever you designed to your 3D printer, and from that 3D printer print something and like have a physical part. Like what you designed on your computer, you have a
Right.
physical part of out of it. So that is the beauty of like the hardware system. So to get to this stage is a really time consuming. And I would say like
Hmm.
around like 70 to 80% of the people would just give up in between any of these stages.
Yeah.
Coming out of this, what makes it like you actually accomplish something.
So basically, the point is we should work upon the projects as well, because unless and until we don't work upon real projects by combining software, hardware, or else only hardware like 3D printing, we will not get that experience like what we really are building or else working upon.
This is something I always recommend for anyone. Like this is not just in the hardware sector.
Hmm.
If you are like just doing your software stuff, let's say you're like building a UI design for some app, or like you're designing for a software, or like you're getting into computer vision,
Hmm.
or like getting into AI now, right? Because it's the next big thing. They want to like do some deep learning or machine
Right.
learning stuff. Like learning that core aspect is one thing, but keep a problem statement in your mind. Like keep a
Mm.
product in your mind,
Yeah.
keep application in your mind. Like either problem statement, a product, or an application. This thing has to be fixed from your side, and then work towards that. Like how do I get this thing working? Like how do I do this? And then like
Right.
sort of come roll back to a place where you need to start with. If you're doing like anything on ROS or computer vision or something, how do I like get this thing done?
Mm.
Have that problem statement and then like roll back and start from the basic stage of the starting point, like
Right.
getting the software installed, to getting your libraries installed, and then like getting the right functions, in your code, or getting uh, you understand, right? Like getting from one stage to the other, you need to keep going from that aspect.
Actually, I was also facing this problem with starting with robotics because it is a vast field and we need much more time to explore on different things like are we good in software, are we good in hardware. So at that time, actually, I tried out different things working on Python, computer vision, machine learning. Once, I was thinking I'm good in image processing, I am good in ROS, or else I am good in any other thing. But at a point, we should also focus on one particular thing as well in order to get like the basics cleared as well as to get mastery of that particular domain. So basically here comes one point about masters. So I have kept this point previously so that we can discuss at last about masters. So is it really important to pursue masters, or else is it okay if we are not able to do masters, or else does it really matters a lot?
So masters has like advantages and disadvantages. There are like pros and cons to it. Um, one thing is one thing I have to make clear is if you're not doing masters, that doesn't mean the end of it.
Mm.
Okay. With this day and age, like in 2024, we have a lot of resources available in the internet. Like we have more resources available in the internet than we have in a specific university, right? If you're going
Mm.
to one specific university where you are getting admitted to your masters, you are like limited to that resources. You'll be able to use the internet even there, but the thing is like you'll be focused more on that specific university, the courses, and if it is like especially like in robotics, you tend to do projects in group. So in that
Mm.
case, like you are very limited to that. So there are tons of resources available on the internet from like certain universities. Even like Stanford has made most of their courses available online. Whatever they are like
Right.
teaching in class, they have all those recordings from classes available online, and you can learn from it. The only thing is you need a dedication to do like
Mm.
from online, or like if you're doing it yourself, that means like you need that dedication. Until and unless you are like really interested in doing that, that is where you'll be completing it. But when you're in masters, like when you're taken as a masters, even if you're not interested, you will be forced to do it. Like that is
Yeah.
wrong. That is wrong. That's where it's I had like a lot of people in my batch. I had like a couple of students who actually gave up on the first year. They came to like
Mm.
YU, they did like first semester of robotics, and they just said like they are done, they cannot do it. It's very difficult for them, and they like went back to India. So
Right.
that is what I would recommend. Like don't do that. Like if you're really interested, and if you think like this is what you want to do, and you're like very clear on that aspect, you can do all those skills, upskilling yourself without doing a master's. That is like very clear. Okay.
Right.
Where like doing masters advantages is on few aspects. There are like pros to it. One is like if you're doing it in a different country, you get that experience, exposure of what people are doing in another country and how the industry is performing in that field. Like if you're choosing robotics, like you actually see physically like what is happening in the field, and you'll like understand the ground reality. Like seeing from here is totally different to like what you actually do over there. So that sort of experience happens only when you are actually present over there. Okay. And second is like the networking. you get like a lot of contacts and like get into touch with like a lot of people. Especially if you're in the university, you tend to like through clubs or like from any of your jobs related things, like you'll be able to make a lot of contacts.
Mm.
So the networking aspect is like really huge. And in case like if you're thinking that whatever you're planning to build, if your interest is towards like building your startup or to become an entrepreneur, like and you think that India is not a market for that, and your core like the customers or clients or someone like who you are going to serve is like in US, then it makes sense to do masters. Like these are a few reasons I would say like these are helpful.
Okay.
And another thing is like the on the robotic side, like what I have felt is there's a huge gap. Like even in US, I'm saying like there is a huge gap between what is being taught and what the industry requires.
Right.
So like it happens even in India. It's not like US has like really advanced level of curriculum or anything. Even the curriculum is sort of like way it's not like really 20-year old, but it's sort of like not up to the latest in the market trends. But what they do is like they teach all the core things, core knowledge, like what is needed, like the basics of everything. And from there, it is your responsibility to pick it up and go to the next stage.
Mm. Right.
Okay. And those core knowledge is also available on the internet.
Mm.
Okay. Like all you need to do is like if you go through any of the university, like the things which you are interested to, you can go through those curriculum. Like it's like they clearly state like what are their curriculum and each semester what are the courses you have and what are the topics you have. These are the things which basically every US university lists down. So you can go to those universities and list down those courses, and you can find those books, publications, and like related contents on YouTube very easily. For example, if you're interested in computer vision and like building neural networks and things like that, you have like all these contents available for you readily. Like you don't have to like even travel across your room or anything. Like right in front of your computer, you have all those contents with you, right? And the same
Yeah.
thing goes with ROS, right? Like ROS, it's like so much of community support. Everything has that. Like the basic understanding, like if in case like if you're building like a mobile systems or like a robotic arm or something, like how do you do that math and how does that
Mm.
calculation happens, the physics and the joint calculations, or like if you're making your mobile robot move, what sort of like dynamics are required. All these are the things which you have to like learn,
Mm.
right? Like those are the things which are available online, and you have to like look into it. And anything if you're like building stuff, like it's already out there. So if that is what you're interested in, I would say like masters is not really a necessary thing.
Okay.
And another aspect is like the financial reasons, right? Like not everyone is like financially stable to actually take up
Mm.
masters because it's super expensive. Not just like getting the masters, but also like the cost of living is like super high now.
Right.
Like major cities like New York, California is like the cost of living is like 3 to 4 times since we were there. Right now, like it's almost twice the rent. The renting itself is like twice as much as we were like paying earlier. So those are the things also you need to look into. If those are the constraints, that shouldn't stop you from doing anything. I would recommend like all the knowledge and information are right out there on the internet. You can like start doing it.
If we are passionate enough to get that particular thing or learn a particular thing, it is like easy for us to achieve that. That's what it takes. Yeah.
Yeah, it is much more easier to achieve it now than like 10 years ago,
Mm.
right?
Right.
10 years ago, you did not have all these information out there. Like even if there were like universities doing it, a lot of maybe like 10 years ago, whatever the technology we had, if you look at it, like we did not have that available in the public domain. Like on the internet, it
Right.
wasn't available. People were not like sharing those contents. People were not. sharing that knowledge. But now, like it is not that way. Like whatever is happening currently in the market or in the industry, it's right out there in the field. Like for example, like I'm not sure if it's there, right? In like the drone sector, right? There
Hmm.
was this concept called as toroidal props. This is
Okay.
just one such example I'm trying to give. Like
Uh-huh.
it's a very niche idea where toroidal props are used in the boats actually, boats and submarine. So it's a
Okay.
sort of a loop-based system. Maybe just give me a minute.
Mhm.
So this is for like drone motors actually.
Right.
Um, this is pretty 3D printed. In fact, this is like a fully 3D printed propeller.
Okay, so using this propeller, the drone can fly.
Yes, it can.
Okay.
It's a very unique design to like
Hmm.
the idea was to like this came up as a research paper saying like this sort of a design will reduce the noise and increase the propeller efficiency.
Okay.
Okay. This came as a paper, and within a month of the publication, within a month of that paper being published, people across the drone community started designing their own. And even like not just designing, they even tested this on the drone, like placing it and then like figuring it out like how good it is. And they
Right.
found like the 3D printed did not have that efficiency. So they even went further and went into injection molding the propellers. Like how you
Okay.
get typical propellers in the market, which are all like injection molded plastic.
Hmm.
Instead of 3D printing, they even went one step further and got it injection molded, and they even did that testing. So the reason why I'm bringing this topic is like this sort of thing will not happen, did not happen like 10 years ago. Like if any idea or something comes up in the industry, right? So for that to get into public was a huge time. Like it took almost a year or like 2 years for people to get into this thing. But nowadays it's not like that. Like once the information or that research is out in the field, people are testing it out to make it better and better.
Hmm.
You don't need to be in that sector to actually know whether this will work or not. You can just
Right.
be out there and getting this sort of information. If you are in the right field, right? If you are in the drone field, like you know what is exactly happening in drones. If you are in robotics, you get to know like what is happening in the field of robotics. So the information is out there pretty quickly. This is a very good example right now, which
Hmm.
could be a relevant topic right now, like to compare things, what is happening. Not many
Right.
of them know what toroidal
Hmm.
prop is. Lot of people actually have made videos on this topic. So if we go
Okay.
now, like maybe 6 months ago, 6 to 8 months ago, when the paper published, you can just see like when the paper was published in the journal and when people started making the videos. It was like right in within like 2 3 weeks of duration of the paper being published, people started testing it out. They designed their own 3D printed it, put it on a drone, tested, like compared it with the traditional propellers, how efficient it is, how noisy it is, and then they found out like in some cases it's better, some cases it is not, and they went to the next stage of like injection molding. So all these things are happening pretty quickly. Yeah,
Yeah.
even that superconductor, that is another example. LK99, I guess, right? Like the university published the paper saying like they found this superconductor which is like really good, and then you immediately it went wildfire. Like everyone started
Hmm.
talking about it, and there were like people who started to actually work on it and
Right.
figured out like it's not actually really superconductor. It needs like a lot of pressure. It needs a different temperature, different atmospheric conditions, and they concluded that this is not going to be like really a superconductor. They can
Hmm.
actually use it.
What do you think about startups in India, and also some like guidelines for those students or else for those who want to start their own journey or journey of entrepreneurship in India?
Yeah, like it is getting better in terms of like supporting startups. There's like a lot of resources coming up. There's like a lot of funds being released. Um, Things are moving. I would say in some cases there are like bureaucratic scenarios which is like pulling us back in not actually innovating things. But those things are like reducing now. Like I would say in the next few years down the line, we'll see things like getting really better and better. and things will progress better for like the startup ecosystem. And
Mm.
for anyone who want to start with, like what my suggestion would be is to like work towards a, like as I said before, like work towards a problem or a
Mm.
idea or like a burning problem which you have faced personally. And do
Yeah.
you and you should also see like whether the market also resonates that with you, right? Like if you have a burning problem for you, and that shouldn't be just for you, right? Like there should be at least 100 people out there who also faces the same thing. So you need to look into that aspect, work towards that idea or that burning problem what you're facing, and that should be your main goal. That resolving that is your main vision, is what you need to make up. Like forget about like working towards that or developing that product or prototype. Don't think about like how do I get it manufactured, how do I like get it working, how will it work, and how will it how would its durability would be. So don't worry about all those aspects. Like just think about whether this problem what I'm having is also there with others. Is this
Yeah.
a huge burning problem or not? And just work towards that. That should be your like a common goal or common vision.
Right.
And from there, like once you know and fix that, this is what you need to do. From there, like you'll eventually find out like how to build that to that stage. Things will happen, and the more you network with people, the more you talk with people. A lot of people don't share the idea, thinking like,
Mm.
what if like they'll steal that, like they'll further do it.
Right.
So ideas are not a like if you have that idea, probably someone else is already having it and they're already working on it. That's how you should be. That's how you should actually discuss. Like the more you discuss, the idea gets better and better. That's what I
Mm.
would say. Taking that first step of developing anything related to that problem statement or the product, I would say like talk to people who also resonate the same with you. Like if they have the same question, ask them like what are they facing? What else are they looking at? What are the things, whatever they are using currently is missing that you can actually try to solve.
Mm.
So the more you talk and discuss about the ideas and problem statement is where like that vision, whatever like you're focusing on, will get better and better. It gets refined as you talk more with people.
Right. And also we get to learn from them. And it's not only about idea, we should be also good at executing that idea as well. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, we are out of questions, and actually, it was an amazing session from your side.
Thanks, Aryan, for the invite and like getting this podcast.
Right.
I hope to see like a lot of other startup founders making podcasts with you. I hope
Yeah.
like they also recommend the same,
Thank
and
you.
hope the startup ecosystem grows,
Right. Right.
especially in places where like specific sectors of startups like hardware is very difficult to get into.
Hmm.
I hope like more people get into it and like more people learn, and we make like more uh, truly made in India products, not just
Right.
white label.